Hi everyone, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I'm answering your homeschool questions. This question is, what is the format of a Waldorf Main lesson? This is a really great question because it can be a little bit confusing, especially if you've never done the Waldorf approach before. So the lessons typically are about an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And that seems like a really long time, especially with children as young as 7 or 8 years old. So what are you doing in this whole period of time? So a Waldorf Main lesson is broken up into about 3 or 4 different sections. And each whole lesson actually takes 3 days. So we're going to start this from scratch. We're going to pretend like it's a Monday morning and it's the very first day of your main lesson block. So main lesson blocks are the different subject areas that are accomplished throughout the year. So you may do maybe 9 or 8 or 10 different main lesson blocks in a year. You do have your daily work as well, and you do have, like, say, your foreign language or your handwork or sports and other things as well. But the main lesson block is what we're going to talk about today. And those are the subject areas that you are concentrating on for a very specific period of time, anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. During that time, each lesson is a lot longer than a typical lesson, so about an hour and a half to 2 hours long. So the way that I begin our lessons, and this is generally the format with a little bit of like innovation on my part, but we'll start with our opening activities. And our opening activities could be for the whole day or for that specific main lesson. So if we're doing something in history, for instance, I might choose an opening activity that in some way relates to the lesson or just relates to just getting the children in a frame of mind to be in a learning space, especially if I've had to transition them out of something that they were enjoying a little bit more. Like suppose they had some free play and now I'm saying it's time to do some schoolwork. We want something that's going to bring them into that learning space a little bit easier. In my opinion, at least it seems to function a little bit better. So a couple of things that you can do. One of the best things that I've been able to do, and this is easy in a home environment, it might be different in a school environment, although I think this one's probably going to work in multiple environments, is reading aloud. And reading aloud isn't necessarily a Waldorf practice. We're usually doing storytelling, so you could do storytelling if you wish, but reading aloud usually caused my children to pause whatever they were doing and be kind of curious and interested in what I was reading, and it would give them that moment to gently break away from the activity that they were doing and then be prepared to transition into a different, whatever it is that I wanted them to do. In this case, it was something academic. Now, with my homeschool, I should also preface that if they were deeply engaged in play, I was very hesitant to pull them away from that. It had to be either they had been, several hours or days playing and we really needed to get some schoolwork done, or it was that the lesson that I really want to present to them I felt very strongly about in the moment, because I do prioritize open-ended play, and I should clarify that open-ended play is very different than, say, video games and screen time, and I don't mean that at all, but any kind of open-ended play or outdoor play, I prioritize that over academics in general, and I'm speaking about children, say, less than 10, 11, or 12 years old. So reading aloud is a great transition to bring them from an activity that they're doing to an activity that you want them to do. Playing games is another great one. So if we're doing a history unit, I might include the Professor Noggin's trivia cards. Those are great fun. They are trivia based, so if you don't know anything about a subject area, those ones might not be a great game to play. I'll also use things like mental math as part of our opening activities, although that's less exciting versus a game. And if you need something that's more tactile, you might include playing with dough or like a Play-Doh or beeswax, something that can kind of get their hands kind of busy if they need something more tactile. Something that's really fun to do if you want to do mental math and have it be a little bit more engaging is to use bean bags and do some active math. So I love to do this with my children. We would stand on opposite sides of the room, we'd have a bean bag and we'd toss it back to each other, and maybe we would work on skip counting in preparation for our multiplication table. So that was a lot of fun to do as well. Okay, so now we're on to the main lesson. So that opening activity might take anywhere from 5 minutes to, in some cases, we've taken like an entire hour to do our opening activities because they've been so engaging. Games like Equate or Scrabble. They can take a long time and they are so good for educational purposes, and they're really great just as a connecting activity. So now we're on to our main lesson. At this point, at the beginning of the main lesson, I like to do the work that's going to require a little bit more active participation. So I assume that when we're starting our main lesson, that's the height of my children's energy and enthusiasm. And so we're going to do the hard work first. And so the hard work tends to be the writing or the review. Now, a review process for a previous lesson might just be oral, but the writing portion is a little bit more on the active side, and that's going to be something that you put into your main lesson. So if you're starting on a Monday, you're not going to have any review work, and you're not going to have any written work. And so a Monday lesson might be a little bit shorter, but you can include things like preparing the main lesson book, especially the cover page, which might have the title of the main lesson that you're doing. And it might include other opening activities that you can spend a little bit more time on, since you're not going to have any review for this particular lesson. Okay, now we're going to go on to Tuesday. So now Tuesday, so same opening activities, etc. You get to the beginning of your main lesson. Now is the time that you can review the previous day's lesson. So that could be oral, it could be the teacher kind of giving some highlights, although I prefer to have the students give me an oral narration, and then it might also include a little bit of written narration. Now you can choose to do a rough draft if you want to go over your students' work and maybe correct spelling, or you can do it directly into the main lesson book. We have done both, just really depends on what we're doing in the moment and my children's abilities. And then you finish with the new content. So the new lesson, I forgot to tell you that on Monday. So Monday, the only lesson would be the new lesson. So I end with the new lesson on Tuesday. And that would be me orally telling them, usually in a story format for most subjects, but also it could just be something that's more academic in nature. Stories are definitely academic, so I don't want to confuse the two, but I'm thinking about math. Sometimes there is a story with math, but also sometimes you're actually teaching a skill. Okay, so let's get to Wednesday. Same beginning, opening activities. So then you'll start with the review first or the written work first. It's up to you how you choose to do that. I usually like to do a review first, just so that I'm aware of what my children are actually absorbing in the lesson. So the review now can be from the previous day, or it can be from all the way from Monday, because by Wednesday, you now have a drawing or written work to do from all the way back on Monday's work, and you have an oral review to do from Tuesday's work, and you have the new lesson to do for Wednesday's work. We're always going to finish with the new lesson, because usually the new lesson, not always, and this is something that you can decide and appropriate for you and your family and your children, but oftentimes the new lesson is, for me, it's a little bit more passive because the children have already done the work. This is not always the case. Sometimes a new lesson is very active, but for the most part, I'm looking at something that is a little bit more enjoyable, in my opinion, is to learn the new information rather than toil over the mastery of the new information. So if I'm just telling you about a new concept in math or something new in history, it's a little bit more interesting, in my opinion, my experience, than having to practice and become proficient in that area. So Wednesday, we'll finish off with the new lesson. So now by Thursday morning's work, you will have one whole double page layout in your main lesson book that includes a drawing and your written work all the way back from Monday's work. Then you'll have written work from Tuesday, and then you will maybe have you'll work on the drawing for Tuesday's work while you're also, this is Thursday, while you're also doing the written work for Wednesday's work, and you'll be orally reviewing the previous day or previous 2 days' lessons. So it does sound a little bit complicated, but once you get into the rhythm of it, it works very smoothly. Now this is really great for classroom teaching. I just found, for me personally, it didn't always work quite as neat and tidy in our homeschool setting. I hope this helps, and you can leave your question in the comment section below.